Good morning, students of class 4th. Students, I hope all of you have enjoyed your summer vacations. But now the vacations are over and it's time to get back to studies. Students, in my last video, I had explained and discussed the exercises of comprehension of lesson 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Students, today, first of all, I'll read the lesson for you, revise the exercises of comprehension, and then explain the language structure exercises of lesson 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. So those of you who have got the new edition of Wordsworth English Reader Book, please take out your books and turn to lesson 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Students, please turn to page number 45. First of all, I'll be reading the lesson to you. Lesson 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput, page number 45. I must have slept for about 9 hours, for when I woke up, it was daylight. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. My arms and legs were tied to pegs fastened into the ground. Thin, strong cords were tied across my body and attached to pegs in the ground. My long hair was spread out and tied down in the same manner. All I could do was to stare upwards at the sun, blinking to ease the pain on my already strained eyes. Suddenly, I heard strange noises around me, but I couldn't move to find out what they were or where they were coming from. The next moment, I felt something alive moving on my leg. It progressed over my stomach and onto my chest, stopping just below my chin. I lowered my eyes downwards as much as I could, hoping to see what sort of insect was crawling on me. Then I suddenly gasped, "Why, it's a human creature barely 6 inches tall." This creature had a bow and arrow in his hands and was followed by 40 more creatures like him. I was so surprised that I let out a frightful roar. All the creatures ran helter-skelter and jumped off my body in terror. After some time, they gathered courage and climbed back onto my body. This time, one of them even clambered onto my chin to get a closer look at me. He let out a screech of excitement. "Hekina Degul! Hekina Degul!" repeated the crowd after him. I didn't give too much attention to their words. I was more concerned with setting myself free. By twisting and turning and pulling and pushing, I managed to pull out the pegs that were holding my left arm down. With one arm free, I was able to free my hair and turn my head to the right. There were cries of panic from the little creatures, and suddenly hundreds of tiny arrows hit my left hand, pricking me like hundreds of needles. When arrows began striking my face, I groaned with pain and raised my left hand to protect myself. They also started jabbing spears at my sides. Luckily for me, my jacket was thick and prevented me from getting severely injured. I thought to myself that the wisest thing to do would be to lie still until night. So I stopped struggling and the arrows stopped coming. But soon I heard another loud noise near my right ear. It was like a banging, like people at work. I turned as much as I could and saw about 50 of the creatures setting up a platform a foot and a half above the ground. Soon, four of them climbed up ladders and stood on the platform. In the middle was an important looking man. He made a long speech looking in my direction. And of course, I didn't understand a word of it. But I could tell from the tone of his voice that some words were threats, others promises, and still others reassurances, especially when he pointed all around and repeated over and over, Lilliput, Lilliput. So I was in a place called Lilliput, though I had never heard of such a country or seen it on a map. I tried to answer the important looking man and tell him that I was a friend and meant no harm. I even raised my eyes and hands to heavens to make my promise stronger. The last time I had eaten was hours before the ship sank. So I had to show these people that I was hungry. I did it by putting my fingers into my mouth as I spoke. The great Hergo, as I later learned this important lord was called, understood my signs and shouted out orders to the crowd below. 100 little people immediately placed ladders at my sides and climbed up on my body with baskets full of meat and bread, which they dumped into my mouth. This was the food that their emperor had ordered as soon as he had received word of my arrival. When I signaled that I was also thirsty, they rolled a barrel up a ladder and across my chest. Then they poured a delicious liquid that tasted like wine, but their barrel was only equal to a cup. And after they had given me a second barrel, they showed me that they had no more. I was grateful to these little creatures. They had treated me generously. So, students, in lesson 6, we have studied that how Gulliver, he was shipwrecked and he was landed on a strange island which was inhabited by barely 6 inches tall, short human creatures. And those creatures had tied Gulliver to ropes fastened on pegs to the ground. So when Gulliver woke up, he tried to get up, but he couldn't move his body because his entire body was tied by the little creatures. And then after some time, these creatures, they had climbed on Gulliver's body. So Gulliver was surprised to see such small creatures. He had never heard about them or had never seen them before. So out of fear, he rode, and his road made the creatures scared, and in helter skelter they all jumped off his body. Then after some time, those little creatures, they gathered courage and again climbed Gulliver's body. And one of them even tried to climb onto his chin to have a closer look at him. And all these creatures were holding bow and arrows in their hands. And when Gulliver, he tried to free his left arm and tried to get his head free so that at least he could turn his head and look around, these little creatures, they started shooting with arrows. And those arrows, they pierced Gulliver like small needles. And Gulliver, he was wearing a thick jacket. So the little creatures, they also started jabbing spears in his body. But luckily, due to his jacket, thick jacket, he was not injured much. But still he could feel the piercing of those arrows like needles. So he thought it's better to lie down still, without any movement till night. But then after some time, he heard a loud banging noise near his ears. But he couldn't make out from where that strange noise was coming. After some time, he turned around his head, he had freed his head, and then he looked that those little creatures, they were constructing a platform about 1.5 feet high. And 4 little creatures climbed the platform through ladders, and an important looking them who was in between those creatures, he stood and he started making a speech looking towards Gulliver. Gulliver couldn't understand their language, but from the tone of his voice, Gulliver could make out that his speech were some words were some warnings, some promises, some reassurances. They wanted Gulliver to act as per their wish, and if he didn't do so, he might be punished or so. The little creature, the important looking creature, later on Gulliver came to know that he was known as the Great Hergo. He was an important lord. And in his speech, again and again, he repeated 2 words, Lilliput, Lilliput. So, from those 2 words, Gulliver could make out that he was in a strange place called Lilliput. And he had never heard about that place before, or had he ever seen it on the map. So it was a strange land which was inhabited by merely 6 inches tall people. So Gulliver thought that it's best to lie still without making any movement so that these creatures understand that he's not an enemy and he's a friend. And he tried to assure those little creatures that he was not an enemy but he was a friend. Then after some time, Gulliver, because he had eaten long before, it had been hours and hours since he had eaten last before his ship sank. So he wanted to convey the little creatures that he was hungry as well as thirsty. So he started putting fingers in his mouth. And the important looking lord, the great Hergo, he understood these signs of Gulliver and he ordered the little people to get some food for him. So the emperor sent basket full of meat and bread for Gulliver, and those little creatures, they carried the food through ladders onto Gulliver's bodies and put it in his mouth. And then when Gulliver, he signaled them that he was thirsty, they carried barrel of sweet delicious liquid onto Gulliver's chest and then poured the liquid into his mouth. And the size of their barrel was equal to a cup for Gulliver. And Gulliver said that that delicious liquid tasted like wine. So they poured 2 barrels of that delicious liquid into Gulliver's mouth. And then they signaled that there was no more liquid left. So Gulliver, he was grateful, he was thankful to these little creatures, at least they had treated him generously, giving him food to eat and something delicious to drink. So students, this was the lesson 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Now let's revise the exercises of this lesson. Students, let's start with exercise A of comprehension. Answer the following questions briefly. And our first question is, where did Gulliver find himself after the shipwreck? The answer is, after the shipwreck, Gulliver found himself tied to pegs fastened into the ground, surrounded by strange human creatures barely 6 inches tall in the land of Lilliput. Question number 2. What had the strange creatures done to Gulliver? Answer 2. The strange creatures had tied Gulliver with cords attached to pegs fastened into the ground. Question number 3. Why did the creatures shoot arrows at Gulliver? Answer 3. When Gulliver tried to free himself from the cords and pull the pegs, the creatures shot arrows at him. Question 4. Who was the important looking man? Answer 4. The great Hergo was the important looking man. Question 5. What did he want to say to Gulliver? Answer 5. Great Hergo made a long speech looking at Gulliver. Though Gulliver could not understand his words, but he could tell from the tone of his voice that some words were threats, others promises, and still others reassurances. Question 6. What did the crowd give Gulliver to eat and drink? Answer 6. The crowd gave Gulliver baskets full of meat and bread to eat. They also gave him 2 barrels equal to a cup full of delicious liquid that tasted like wine to drink. So students, these were the question and answers, and I'm sure all of you must have completed the question and answers in your English notebook. Now let's revise. Exercise B. Who spoke these lines in the story? And the first one is, my arms and legs were tied to pegs fastened into the ground. Who spoke these lines? Dr. Lemuel Gulliver. He spoke this line when he found himself lying in the island. When he woke up, he wanted to get up, but he couldn't move as the little creatures had tied him. So he is narrating the story to the readers. So the answer would be Dr. Lemuel Gulliver. Second, why? It's a human creature barely 6 inches tall. These lines has also been spoken by Dr. Lemuel Gulliver, as when the little creatures, they climbed onto his body to have a closer look at him, and when Dr. Gulliver, he lowered his eyes to look at which sort of insect was crawling, and what did he see? He saw a small human creature barely 6 inches tall holding bow and arrow in his hand. So he was greatly surprised to look at the small creatures, and he was followed by 40 other creatures. So while it's a human creature barely 6 inches tall, these lines have been spoken by Dr. Lemuel Gulliver. Then the third one, Hekina Degul. Now, one of the little creatures, he gathered courage and climbed onto the chin of Dr. Lemuel Gulliver to have a closer look at him. And when he looked at Dr. Lemuel Gulliver closely, out of excitement, he shouted, Hekina Degul in his own language. So this was spoken by one of the little creatures of Lilliput. So the answer would be one of the little creatures. And the fourth one, Lilliput, Lilliput. This was spoken by the great Hergo. When he climbed onto the platform and he was giving a speech which was warning, promise and reassurance for Gulliver to follow the instructions. So in his speech, Gulliver could only understand two words which were repeated again and again. And those two words were Lilliput, Lilliput. And from these two words only, Gulliver came to know that he was in a place called Lilliput. Now, students, let's revise the frame sentences which we had already discussed. The first word for frame sentences is fastened. The first word, students, is fastened. And fastened means fixed. And the sentence on fastened is, she fastened the belt tightly around her waist. The second word for make sentence is shipwrecked, which means left by a ship destroyed at sea. And the sentence is, he is shipwrecked on an alien planet. Students, the third word for make sentence is strained. And strained means stressed or tense. And the sentence is, her face looked strained and weary. Weary means tired. And the fourth word for make sentence is progress. Progress means moved forward. And the sentence is, the work progressed at a slow pace. Pace means speed. The work progressed at a slow pace. And the fifth word for make sentence is frightful, which means terrible. And the sentence on frightful is, they left the house in a frightful mess. They left the house in a frightful mess. Students, the next word for make sentence is panic, which means sudden, uncontrollable fear or anxiety. And the sentence is, the earthquake caused panic among the people. The earthquake caused panic among the people. And the seventh word for make sentence is clambered. And clambered means climb with difficulty. And the sentence is, the children clambered over the rocks. And the eighth word for make sentences is arrival. Arrival means coming. And the sentence is, the late arrival of the train messed up all our plans. So students, we have revised the exercises of comprehension. Now let's start with the exercises of language structure. And our first exercise is based on gender. Now students, what do you mean by a gender? Students, word which denotes nouns, which denotes the male are known as masculine gender, and the nouns which denotes the females are known as feminine gender. Now, the definition of masculine gender is A noun that denotes a male is said to be of the masculine gender. For example, men, lion, hero, etc. And the definition of feminine gender is a noun that denotes a female is said to be of the feminine gender. Example, woman, lioness, heroine, etc. So, in our next exercise, students, we need to write the genders. If the masculine is given, we need to write the feminine gender of it. And if the feminine is given, we need to write the masculine of the feminine gender. So we'll start with exercise A of language structure. Complete the following by choosing the correct masculine and feminine words from the box given below. Now let's read the words given in the boxes. Students, the first is he, bear. The second is bride. The third is doe. The fourth is duchess. The fifth is horse. And the sixth is gander. Now we need to put these words in their right place. So, in the column of masculine gender, the first word is bridegroom. And the masculine gender of bridegroom is bride. So we need to write bride over here. Please write bride. So bridegroom, and the feminine gender of bridegroom is bride. Beta bridegroom, a boy who's getting married, जिसको हिंदी में हम दूल्हा बोलते हैं. And उसका feminine gender क्या होगा? Bride. Bride means दुल्हन. Bridegroom, bride. Bride is the feminine gender and bridegroom is the masculine gender. Bridegroom matlab दूल्हा and bride matlab दुल्हन. So, bridegroom, bride. Now, the next word, second is dash and the feminine is given mare. So, mare is the feminine gender of a horse. So, the second one, masculine gender will be horse. We need to write horse over here. Horse. So, horse, mare. Horse matlab ghoda and uska feminine gender will be mare, which means ghodi in Hindi. So, horse, mare. Bridegroom, bride and horse, mare. Now, students, the third one is duke. The third one is duke. And the feminine gender of duke is duchess. D-U-C-H-E-S-S. So, duke, duchess. Duke, duchess. Duke, duchess. And then the fourth one is the masculine gender, there's a blank, and the feminine gender is given she-bear. And the masculine gender of she-bear is he-bear. So we need to write he-bear in the fourth column. So the third one is duke, duchess, and the fourth one is he-bear, and the feminine gender of he-bear is she-bear. Then the fifth one, the masculine gender is again blank and the feminine is given goose. Goose, it's a bird, and the masculine gender of goose is gander. G-A-N-D-E-R. Gander, goose. Gander is the masculine gender and goose is the feminine gender. Then the sixth one, students, is stag. Stag is a male deer. And the feminine of stag is doe. Doe is a female deer. D-O-E, doe. Doe is a female deer. Stag, doe. D-O-E, doe. That is the feminine gender of stag. So let's once again revise all the masculine and feminine genders. The first one was, students, bridegroom, and the feminine gender of bridegroom is bride. The second one was horse, And the feminine gender of horse is mare. And the third one is duke. Duke is the masculine gender. And the feminine gender of duke is duchess. The fourth one is he bear. The feminine gender of he bear is she bear. Fifth was gander. And the feminine gender of gander is goose. And the sixth one is stag. That's a masculine gender, male deer. And the feminine gender of stag is doe. Doe is a female deer. So once again, I'll repeat. Bridegroom, bride, horse, mare, duke, duchess, he bear, she bear, gander, goose, stag, doe. So I hope all of you have understood this exercise. Please complete the question and answers of comprehension in your notebook. That is exercise A. Then exercise B. Who spoke these lines in the story? Please complete this exercise also in your notebook. Then do write the frame sentences. And then language structure exercise A. Complete the following by choosing the correct masculine and feminine words from the box. Please do not write the box and complete this exercise in the notebook. You just need to write the masculine and feminine gender, like bridegroom, bride, horse, mare, duke, duchess, he bear, she bear, gander, goose, and stag, doe. Please do it in your book also, page number 49 and 50. I hope you have understood the gender. Once again, I'll revise gender, students. A noun that denotes a male is said to be of the masculine gender. Example, man, lion, hero. These are all masculine genders. And a noun that denotes a female is said to be of the feminine gender. Example, woman, lioness, heroine, etc. So please complete exercise A in your notebook.